was funnier.
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Tonight on The Wrap, Donald Trump says he wants to be involved in picking Iran's next supreme leader. Is the U.S. president stamping an American claim on the country's political future as the war escalates? American and Israeli forces continue to hammer Iran and Lebanon, while Iran ramps up retaliatory attacks around the Gulf.
They're voting with their feet, or they're getting in their cars and they're trying to get out. And, you know, it's an exodus and it's being driven by fear.
Donald Trump has also taken another shot at the Prime Minister over what he sees as a lack of support for the U.S. campaign. Sir Keir Starmer, though, says the special relationship is in operation as the UK deploys more fighter jets and readies a warship. On a day of new small boat arrivals, the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood lays out even tougher asylum rules. It's a case for change she'll need to make with the public and her party, including the forced deportation of children.
There is no easy solution here, but if you're going to have rules, then you better enforce them.
Well, we discuss the day's biggest stories with Zoe Williams and Francis Elliott. Plus, we'll take a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers, including a report in the Financial Times that the U.S. is looking to buy Ukrainian interceptors to fend off Iran's drones. Good evening. Iran's war rippled ever more violently across the Middle East today as the US and Israel hammered the country for a sixth day. Israel also ordered wider evacuations in Lebanon, where it's fighting against Iran-allied Hezbollah, while Iran escalates its retaliation, firing more missiles and drones at Israel and several Gulf countries. So with the conflict appearing increasingly open-ended, President Trump has declared that he wants a say in who becomes Iran's next supreme leader. Well, with me tonight are The Guardian columnist Zoe Williams and editor of the House magazine, Francis Elliott. Welcome to both of you. Zoe, first of all, what do you think about the Trump idea of having a say over who rules Iran?
Well, quick thought is he has no legitimacy there. But second thought is he does always seem to manage to lose, however jackbooted he is. So if you look at Venezuela, he ended up paying more for what he was paying for already, even when he made that radical move of deposing Maduro there.
Francis, what do you think?
I think this is Trump actually trying to echo what he did in Venezuela. And in some senses, there may be a glimmer of hope for those who think that this was a sort of an early exit. I mean, we haven't really heard what Trump's exit strategy is yet. And if he's prepared to signal that he's prepared to make a deal with a hardliner in the IRGC, for instance, then I think that would be welcome. He also he said, I think, on a clip you may show later, that he'd received a call from the Iranians looking to make a deal. So, you know, we'll
see how that develops. And we will, of course, hear more from Zoe and Francis shortly. First, here's some of what President Trump has been saying about the war tonight.
The United States military, together with the wonderful Israeli partners, continues to totally demolish the enemy far ahead of schedule. Their Navy is gone, 24 ships in 3 days. That's a lot of ships. Their anti-aircraft weapons are gone, so they have no air force, they have no air defense. All of their airplanes are gone. Their communications are gone. Missiles are gone, launches are gone.
And we are waiting for the U.S. Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, to give an update on American operations in Iran. We'll go live to that, of course, as soon as it happens. First, though, let's bring in our U.S. correspondent, David Blevins. David, good to see you. A lot of developments in the past few hours, including the president saying that he wants a say in who might be Iran's next supreme leader. What reaction has there been to that?
Yes, it's been a very busy afternoon here in Washington. We've had the surreal spectacle of the president giving us that war update while standing alongside Lionel Messi and his Inter Miami football team colleagues celebrating their MLS Cup win at the White House today in the midst of a war going on. It was interesting that, having listed what he considers to be the US military's achievements, President Trump said they've been calling us, not sure who they are because the White House says the regime has been wiped out, adding, I'm telling them it's a little bit too late. He then repeated his call for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard to lay down their arms and be granted immunity rather than face certain death, and urged them to stand with the people in taking back the country. That's interesting. We keep hearing that over and over again because he's clearly focused on the future. President Trump, in a conversation with Politico today, said he wanted to have a big impact on who would rule the country next. He said without that, there would be no solution and they would have to do this all over again. And then in a later conversation with Axios, he said he had to be involved. He didn't consider Ayatollah Khamenei's son to be an acceptable successor because he didn't believe that would bring peace. And then compared the situation in Iran with the situation in Venezuela, said he had effectively chosen a new leader there in Delcy Rodriguez. Well, of course, Delcy Rodriguez was President Maduro's deputy. She's basically now doing Donald Trump's bidding. And at the end of the day, Venezuela and Iran are two very different places dealing with very different situations.
They are indeed. David Blevins with the latest from Washington. David, thank you. And let's speak now to Zoe Williams and Francis Elliott. Francis, if I can start with you. We're just hearing David say, of course, it's almost impossible to compare Venezuela and Iran. There's an ideology behind the supreme leader's position. So what have you made of Donald Trump's comments?
Well, as I say, I mean, I think it's the beginnings of a exit strategy. He's clearly kind of needs some sort of off-ramp. And I think it will give some heart to to people like Starmer who really want him to spell out how this war ends.
The thing is, though, if, as you say, the successor he chooses is also a hardliner, it makes a mockery of the entire thing, because he went in on putatively democratic grounds, which was in itself ridiculous, because the way he's behaving in his own country is so anti-democratic. But if you go in and say, I'm here to solve the problems of the Iranian people, and then install a hardliner who's going to give them exactly the same headache and then some, you just look ridiculous.
The point is that from the beginning, it wasn't very clear why he was going in. Was it to help the Iranian people? Was it the nuclear program? Is it regime change, which, of course, everyone is pointing to? Do you think these comments point even more towards regime change?
Well, it's not. It's a change of. It's an alteration of regime. It's not a regime change. It's not what people would really normally think about regime change. I mean, when people were protesting on the streets of Tehran in January, they thought they were going to bring down the theocracy. If he's just saying, "Give me a theocrat that I can do business with," well, I think that is going to disappoint a lot of people. It's obviously, we're in a horrific place here where.
Forgive me, Francis. Let's stop you because we can hear now from the U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Let's listen.
Well, good afternoon. I'm honored to stand right here today alongside one of America's finest, Admiral Brad Cooper, commander of U.S. Central Command. We just had a chance to spend a couple of hours together, better part of 2 hours, going through the entirety of this operation, Operation Epic Fury. And Admiral, I want to thank you for everything you do and your incredible leadership, for your dynamic thinking, the way you're attacking this problem set on every level. In just days of Operation Epic Fury, you and your team have delivered nothing short of devastating, precise strikes, taking out the better part of Iran's Navy, making it combat ineffective, neutralizing missile sites and launchers, and establishing total dominance over the skies we fly over and seas we fly over. Our forces are executing with unmatched skill, and the mission is advancing decisively. This is the kind of no-nonsense, results-driven warfighting that America demands. And you're delivering it in spades. You are the man for this moment. Admiral Cooper, on behalf of the President, the Department of War, and every American watching, I want to thank you for the outstanding job you and CENTCOM are doing. Keep pressing the fight, and we are with you all the way. A few thoughts before I hand it over to the Admiral for an update. Iran is hoping that we cannot sustain this, which is a really bad miscalculation for the IRGC in Iran. You see, there's no shortage of American will here. We remember and honor our fallen, those 6 that we will soon welcome at Dover, who gave everything for their country in this mission. We remember them. But we remember them by rededicating ourselves even more fervently to this mission. Our commitment to our mission objectives only increases as our advantages continue to increase. We've got no shortage of munitions. Our stockpiles of defensive and offensive weapons allow us to sustain this campaign as long as we need to. Again, our munition status only increases as our advantage increases. Our capabilities, we have only just begun to fight and fight decisively. Having a chance to hear from Admiral Cooper, if you think you've seen something, just wait. The amount of combat power that's still flowing, that's still coming, that we'll be able to project over Iran is a multiples of what it currently is right now when you add up our capabilities and those of the Israeli Defense Forces. And we have no shortage of authorities. The Admiral knows we have clear objectives with maximum authorities on the battlefield. The dumb, politically correct wars of the past were the opposite of what we're doing here. They had vague objectives with restrictive, minimalist rules of engagement. No more. Our authorities, his authorities, CENTCOM's authorities through the President and myself are maxed out. Our capabilities are overwhelming and gathering still, as are those of our Israeli partners. Our munitions are full up, and our will is ironclad, which means our timeline is ours and ours alone to control. As long as it takes to ensure the United States of America achieves these objectives. And as we flow more forces, and as we flow more capabilities, and as our munitions as we're flying over the top, have even more devastating effects. We set the tempo, we set the timeline, led by the commander on the ground. Our ear is to the ground to listen to Admiral Cooper. What he needs and what he needs, he will get. We are built for this fight, and we are in it to win it. And we have the right commander in the lead. So I'll now hand it over to Admiral Brad Cooper to give you an update right here from CENTCOM. Admiral.
Mr. Secretary, first, thank you very much and good afternoon, and welcome to U.S. Central Command Headquarters, America's War-Fighting Headquarters. It's great to be here alongside the Secretary and representing the more than 50,000 men and women in uniform currently executing Operation Epic Fury. So, Mr. Secretary, first, thank you very much for your leadership and support and the very clear vision and objectives that you've given us to allow us to use overwhelming force against the Iranian terrorist regime. And thanks to all of you for attending today, and welcome to Tampa. We are now starting our 6th day of a historic mission to eliminate Iran's ability to threaten Americans. We are, if I could channel my inner Navy officer, we are at full speed ahead in executing orders given by leadership in Washington. The President and Secretary Hegseth have been crystal clear in their expectations, and we are at a high level of execution. As described by the Secretary and earlier this week by me, U.S. combat power is building as Iranian combat power declines. Our air dominance allows us to hit Iran's center of gravity with overwhelming power and reach. A couple of examples. In just the last 72 hours, America's bomber force has struck nearly 200 targets deep inside of Iran, including around Tehran. And in just the last hour, U.S. B-2 bombers dropped dozens of 2,000-pound penetrator bombs targeting deeply buried ballistic missile launchers. Notably, we've also struck Iran's equivalent of Space Command, which degrades their ability to threaten Americans. Then, if I just look back over the last 24 hours of the operation compared to where we were at its start, ballistic missile attacks have decreased by 90% since day one. Drone attacks have decreased by 83% since day one. Having said this, we remain vigilant. Our strikes against the Iranian Navy have intensified. You may have heard the President say just a little while ago that we have sunk or destroyed 24 ships. That was true at the moment. We're now up over 30 ships. And in just the last few hours, we hit an Iranian drone carrier ship, roughly the size of a World War II aircraft carrier, and as we speak, it's on fire. The President gave us another task, to raise or level Iran's ballistic missile industrial base. So we're not just hitting what they have, we're destroying their ability to rebuild. And so as we transition to the next phase of this operation, we will systemically dismantle Iran's missile production capability for the future, and that's absolutely in progress. This is going to take some time, but our forces are well supplied, as the Secretary said, and we are absolutely ready to prosecute this mission decisively. Our combined joint forces have relentlessly destroyed Iran's air defenses over the past few days, and they've continued hunting for more systems to kill. Our air defenders are operating at the very top of their game. I couldn't be prouder, shoulder to shoulder with our partners in the region in many cases, providing the most integrated air defense network in Middle East history. We are fighting to win. Through combined U.S. and Israeli combat power, we will continue decimating Iran's ability to project power outside its borders. And if I can just conclude by saying a strong salute to the brave men and women who are out on the pointy edge of this, really doing exceptional work. I just couldn't be prouder, and I know the American people share in that same pride. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll take a few questions. Yeah, right here.
Sir, appreciate it. Admiral, I wanted to ask, or Mr. Secretary, the Ukrainian president said today that the U.S. has asked for specific capability to deal with Shag drones, Iranian drones. And you guys talked about what you asked for, and has there been any surprises from Iranian capabilities that you guys have seen in the past 6 days?
We're very familiar with Iranian's capabilities, and as you might imagine, we planned for it right from the outset, and I feel good about what the plan was. Like any good organization, we adjust as necessary to meet the environment, and we've made those appropriate adjustments.
Absolutely. Right here.
Thanks, Secretary Hegseth. I have two for both of you. One, was an American pilot shot down today in Iraq? And two, I've heard reports that there's enriched uranium stored in Isfahan. I've also heard reports that there's not a lot of bombing there. Is that on purpose? Do we believe there's enriched uranium there? And would we ever send special forces to secure it?
As CENTCOM pointed out, that those reports of an F-15 being shot down are false. As you can imagine, Iran is doing everything it can to peddle in lies, deception, and inflation of numbers and reality, mostly to propagandize to their own people, right? They've shut down the internet. They're hoping they can convince their own population that they're having success. One thing one of their leaders said recently is that 500 Americans have been killed, they claim. These are lies. The lies will continue. CENTCOM will continue to debunk those lies. So, and as often is the case in conflict, first reports are often wrong. As it pertains to nuclear material and things like that, one of the objectives the president has always said is that Iran will not have a nuclear bomb, nuclear capabilities, but we would never disclose what we will or will not do inside operational plans. So Admiral Cooper's got a plan. We're working that plan, and targets will be struck or not struck according to what we want to achieve. Yeah, right there.
Secretary Hegseth, the president said earlier today in an interview that he would like to have a say in who's the next leader of Iran. Is this an expansion of your military objectives? Do you view it that way? And additionally, you spoke earlier today about how previous leaders have drawn resources from our hemisphere to the Middle East. How do you avoid that?
Well, there's no expansion. Ultimately, I think the president's having a heck of a say in who runs Iran, given the ongoing operation we have. So there's no expansion in our objectives. We know exactly what we're trying to achieve. I think today's a great example of what this War Department is capable of doing. I was just in another part of Florida today where we announced, America's counter cartel conference. 18 countries coming together from Central, South America, and the Caribbean coming together to fight cartels. That is something that is ongoing. We're focused there. We're focused in the Indo-Pacific. We can mass combat power in CENTCOM. EUCOM is able to support that as well. So we know we're laser focused on our hemisphere and our homeland. And that's why we locked down the border. That's why we're working with partners to take on cartels. That's why we're sinking drug boats. That's why we're on the offense there. But the beautiful things about combatant commands is that, Brad Cooper's laser focused on Central Command, just like Frank Donovan is laser focused on Southern Command. We can do both. That's what a global power can do. Ultimately, this issue of Iran's nuclear pursuit and their unwillingness through negotiations to stop it was something President Trump has said for a long time needs to be dealt with. And after 47 years, he's doing something that no other president was willing to do. And we're doing it overwhelmingly, and we're doing it decisively, while also in other parts of the globe having the desired effects. I mean, take, for example, what we displayed yesterday, the Iranian ship in the Indian Ocean, sunk by Indo-PACOM, another combatant command, who coordinated with us in order to make that happen. So America's reach is global. Our focus here, though, these missions are narrow, they're scoped, and Admiral Cooper is well on his way to ensuring that we reach those objectives. Right here, yes, sir.
Howard Allman, condolences for the troops killed. The Ukrainians are talking about providing low-cost interceptors, given their experience. Is that something that the Pentagon is looking for? And Admiral Cooper, can you walk us through a little bit about how effective the Lucas drones have been, what kind of targets they've hit, and how much that's helped, given that they're low-cost alternatives to the more expensive units? Go ahead.
Sure. I'm not familiar with the particular offer, but the interceptors in general. We've had a number of new capabilities being fielded. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about it from an operational perspective of what those are. But I think you have seen over a period of time us kind of get on the other side of this cost curve on drones in general. If I just walk back a couple of years, you remember what you used to always hear, we're shooting down a $50,000 drone with a $2 million missile. These days, we're spending a lot of time shooting down $100,000 drones with $10,000 weapons from ours. So that's one aspect of it. Lucas, indispensable. As many of you know, and if you don't know, this was an original Iranian drone design. We captured it, pulled the guts out, sent it back to America, put a little Made America on it, brought it back here, and we're shooting it at the Iranians. Good targets.
Good targets. Absolutely. Right there, yes.
Thank you so much, Secretary. President Trump, in his first speech after the launch of the Operation Epic Fury, he addressed Iranian people, and he said that there is going to be a time for you to come out, but it's not now. Stay home. It's not safe. I want to know if there is a timeline for that you're going to urge Iranian people to come out, how that is going to play out, and how are you going to protect the protesters. You know that they're going to be shot probably, as we witnessed in January. That's what happened. How are you going to protect and support the protesters? And Admiral, I have one question for you. How are you going to minimize the civilian harms? We have a lot of evidence that the besiege units, IRGC commanders, they are now gathering in schools, in hospitals, in purely residential areas because their headquarters are bombarded, they are ruined, of course. So how are you going to protect the civilians while you're attacking the IRGC people hard? Thank you.
I would just say on the protests, obviously a lot of the Iranian people showed a lot of courage in those protests, and we saw the Iranian regime was revealed for what it is in the way they reacted to that. The world saw that. No one's done more than President Trump to reopen the opportunity for those who want a free Iran to do so. Ultimately, it's common sense, as he said up front. Don't go out and protest while bombs are dropping inside Tehran and elsewhere. So there will come a moment where he determines, or they determine, that it's the time to seize that advantage. But there's a lot of things we're doing and the Israeli military is doing, targeting those individuals who are targeting those who protest. The more you do that and you erode their will and you erode their capabilities, the more you create an opportunity for people to boldly stand up.
Yeah, I would just reinforce the point. We're targeting the people. We're targeting the
And we've been listening to Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Secretary for War, and also Admiral Brad Cooper, Commander of U.S. Central Command, talking about the operation in Iran. And Pete Hegseth starting by really emphasizing that the U.S. is going to last the distance in this war, and it was based on their timeline. Let's go back to our U.S. correspondent, David Blevins. Usual, I suppose, strong tone from Pete Hegseth here. David, what did you make of what him and Brad Cooper said?
Yes, bombastic is the word I think I've been using all week, and Pete Hegseth is continuing with that characteristic through this press conference. The American people really have been concerned about a couple of things, I think it would be fair to say. One of them is the supply of munitions. Well, the Defence Secretary, or self-styled Secretary of War, has addressed that, saying the Iranians are hoping we can't sustain that. That would be a really bad calculation, he said. There's no shortage of American will, no shortage of American munitions. Then we had a very positive update from their perspective from Admiral Brad Cooper, who said it was full speed ahead in the last 72 hours. He claimed they'd hit 200 targets. In the last 2 hours alone, he claimed B-2 bombers had dropped dozens of penetrating bombs, and compared the US-Israeli operation with the Iranian operation by saying the number of ballistic missile attacks had reduced by 90% and drone attacks by 80-odd%. Then the other big question Americans have been asking, of course, is what happens next. Earlier today, President Trump was very adamant that he was going to have a big say in who succeeded Ayatollah Khamenei. He said he didn't find his son an acceptable choice, and that if the right choice wasn't made, they'd find themselves back there in a few years' time. And he made that comparison with Venezuela, where, of course, he believes he has chosen the leader of Venezuela in Delcy Rodriguez right now. When Pete Hegseth was asked about that, he said, make no mistake about it, President Trump will have a say in who is the next leader of Iran.
David Blevins with the latest there from Washington. David, for the moment, thank you. Let's go back to Francis and Zoe. Zoe, if I can start with you. Obviously bombastic language, as David was saying, but very interesting bits there as well. The one that stuck out for me was about the rules of engagement, which he'd mentioned before, saying previous wars had been dumb, politically correct wars with no objectives and strict rules of engagement, which he seems not to be a big fan of.
It's kind of terrifying to hear him say things like that, because basically he's talking about the Geneva Convention, right? What are rules of engagement that any of us understand, except rules governing how you treat prisoners, how you treat civilians, how you avoid civilian casualties, how you draw the distinction between competence and non-competence. That's all we've got. That's what the international order is for. So when you hear somebody so senior in the US administration saying what a great war this is, that we don't have to do that anymore, even if you can't actually scope out what he can now do that he didn't used to be able to do, is pretty chilling to hear. The thing is, with the admiral, you know, you expect kind of military focus and militaristic metaphors from an admiral. Fair enough. But the Hesketh's language is almost kind of video game terminology. You know, it's kind of very, very basic. It's very triumphalist. It's very like a kid shooting in Grand
We're in
Theft
it to win it.
Auto.
We're in it to win it. Was particularly.
That kind of combination of triviality, like the infantile vision, and completely separated from humanity, parading on the world stage. Yeah, it's really frightening.
Speaking of humanity, though, he was asked how they're going to protect the civilian population now that obviously many members of the regime will be hiding within it.
Yes, well, I mean, you know, he was reminded that in Trump's initial speech at the beginning of the operation, Trump called on the Iranian people to rise up. Not now, he said, you know, but the time will come when you must rise up. And they continue to walk this dual path of, we're going to so degrade the Iranian kind of regime that it was going to collapse from within, while also holding out the possibility of a deal to prop it up. And I think that spooks potential allies.
Absolutely. OK, let's look closer to home, because having said that he's no Churchill, Donald Trump took more shots at the Prime Minister today, expressing disappointment in what he sees as a lack of support in Iran. Sir Keir Starmer conceded he's not spoken to President Trump since the war began on Saturday, but he insists it's business as usual between them.
The special relationship is in operation right now. We're working with the Americans in the deployment from our bases. We are working together in the region. The US and the British working together to protect both the US and the British in joint bases where we're jointly located. And we're sharing intelligence on 24/7 basis in the usual way. That is the special relationship. That is a special relationship in operation. And clearly it's for the President to take decisions that he considers in the national interest, the right decisions for the US. I understand that, I respect that. But equally, it's for me, as the British Prime Minister, to take decisions that I consider to be in the best interest of the United Kingdom.
Well, our political correspondent Rob Powell joins us now. What did you make of this press conference? A bit awkward when he had to admit he hadn't actually spoken to the president since Saturday.
Yeah, I think it was an attempt by the Prime Minister to try and at least portray a sense that he was gripping the situation and was sort of in charge of the UK response. I think, you know, you've had a few events over the last 5-6 days where initially the UK said the US can't use the bases, and then a couple of days later, obviously, changed on that after Iran started hitting Western interests and UK interests in the region. You had the drone that hit Akrotiri, and then the announcement that we were sending a Type 45 destroyer, but that it wouldn't arrive for, 10 or 11 days still as well. You had the repatriation flight that was supposed to go last night, didn't, and I think is due to land in a couple of hours as well. So I think it was... You know, he was trying to talk about some of the resource that was going in, extra Typhoons, that plane was now in the air. But he was also trying to, I think, sort of make the political argument a little bit about why initially the decision was made not to give the US permission. That was somewhat undermined, though, by some pretty jaw-dropping reporting in the Spectator magazine earlier today, though, suggesting that actually on Friday, a day before these Iran strikes were launched, at a meeting of the National Security Council, Keir Starmer may have actually been a little more open to the idea of sort of preemptively giving permission for the US to use UK bases, albeit for defensive strikes. When Keir Starmer was asked about that at that press conference, he gave an incredibly carefully worded answer, essentially saying, well, no specific request came in until Saturday, and that was when we agreed to it. So I think for anyone looking for sort of reassurance that there is a kind of strategy to the UK position and there is grip, and that it isn't a sort of sense of prevarication and drift that we've seen in so many areas of government policy, I don't think they'll be reassured by that particular answer.
Right. Francis, are you reassured by any of it?
The first thing to say, I think this is the most exquisitely difficult foreign policy challenge, certainly since Brexit. and there are really no good options for a British Prime Minister. I mean, this is the sort of war, when the FCDO Foreign Office would be kind of like preparing the worst things that could happen, being on the wrong side of a US president in a war in Iran is probably kind of high on the list. So, and as awkward and as difficult it is currently for Starmer, I think he will be perfectly content that he has held the line so far on not being involved in active operations in this way. They may well get dragged into it. I mean, I just invite you to consider what the backlash might have been had it gone the other way. Now, this, as you say, the incredible reporting about the National Security Council, I mean, such a secret meeting to leak details. Clearly, there was enough accuracy that he could not, as you say, properly deny it. Will infuriate him, but I think in the wider sweep of this war, it's a minor detail. You know, Starmer was open to the possibility. He was talked round. It doesn't do a whole lot of faith for his authority, and it does tell us about what the cabinet dynamics are. But you know, ultimately, on the big picture, I think he's perfectly content where he is right now. The question is, can he stay there? What happens if an RAF pilot gets shot down? You know, you in choosing not to shape the outcome, you are at the mercy of events.
Sorry? I mean, the kind of... The truly outrageous thing is that whatever Keir says, even when people agree with him, they can't bring themselves to agree with him, right? The majority of the British public do not like Donald Trump, whatever party they're in, and yet they still didn't like the sight of Keir not immediately agreeing to his demands. Nevertheless, then the sight of him coming out and saying the special relationship is still operational when Donald Trump is openly insulting him in press conferences is terribly embarrassing. And it's not just embarrassing for Starmer, I don't think. It's embarrassing nationally. A lot of people are cringing watching it because there's nothing like watching somebody claim a special relationship that plainly isn't there that makes you look really craven and pathetic. So I don't envy the Prime Minister, and I certainly wouldn't have wanted him to act any other way in the first instance. So, you know, it was not the right move to give America exactly what they wanted, especially when their plans seemed so haphazard and chaotic. But nor do I support his current iteration, which is to, you know, pretend he's Trump's right-hand man when he's not even talking to him, and counsel some kind of discourse between Iran and the US when the only person they're less likely to listen to than each other is him.
Well, we'll see how that develops, especially, you know, if there's any changes over the next few days. But first, the government's first rescue flight is in the air, heading towards the UK tonight after it failed to get off the ground yesterday. Many other British nationals have been arriving from the region on commercial flights. Well, our correspondent Amelia Harper is at Stansted Airport. Amelia, when are we expecting this flight to land?
Well, good news for passengers on board. This Titan Airways flight has now taken off. It left Egypt. Its refuelling stop in Cairo a couple of hours ago. And we expect it to land here at London Stansted at around 6 minutes past 1, give or take a few minutes. But this was a flight that was meant to take off yesterday from Muscat International Airport in Oman. It was meant to take off at about 11 o'clock local time or about 7 p.m. Our time, but due to technical difficulties, it never got off the ground. And the Prime Minister yesterday said that 2 more repatriation flights were going to be taking off in the next couple of days. But we know that it's currently over the Adriatic Sea and it's not going to be long until it lands here in London, much to the relief of the passengers on board. In terms of commercial flights now, 4,000 British nationals have landed back in the UK after the war broke out 6 days ago. As we've been saying for the last nearly a week now, thousands of flights that were meant to leave the Middle East coming back to the UK have had to be cancelled, and much of the airspace above the Middle East has been closed. 8 flights were due to land and did successfully land here in the UK yesterday. And hopefully by the end of today, we should see 10 commercial flights made their way successfully here. In terms of BA, Sir Keir Starmer said that that airline was putting on an extra commercial flight. So they put one on this morning in the very early hours. We're expecting to have one on Friday, one on Saturday and one on Sunday, all taking off from Muscat International Airport in Oman. It should be said that that is not the usual flying route for BA, but the airline has said it really can't operate any other routes because of the airspace closures. And as of tonight, 140,000 British nationals have registered with the government saying, I am currently in the Middle East. Not all of them, of course, will want to come home, but it's understood that the majority are interested in coming home at some point. The current Foreign Office travel advice is this. They're warning against all but essential travel to Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar and the UAE, and they're advising against all travel to Israel and Palestine. But with these major international airports having big issues with flights at the moment, including Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Doha, they see, Barbara, 500,000 passengers a day using those airports. And with the backlog that we're seeing at the moment, this is something that could potentially take weeks to clear.
Absolutely, it's one of the biggest hubs when it comes to flights in the world. Amelia Harper, thank you there in Stansted, where we are expecting that first rescue flight. Now, the war is said to have killed more than 1,200 people in Iran so far. The next highest death toll, 70, is in Lebanon. And today, there was chaos and gridlock in Beirut after Israel ordered evacuations, signaling more strikes. Fears were compounded by Israel's far-right finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, who said part of Beirut could come to resemble Gaza. Our international correspondent John Sparks reports now from Lebanon.
The news spread like wildfire. The streets of Beirut were gripped by panic. Residents stuffed themselves into cars or tried to leave on foot after the Israeli military served an evacuation order on its southern suburbs. The fear was self-evident that Israel's planes and drones will obliterate their homes.
We're not talking about a couple of neighborhoods, we're talking about practically half the city, 500,000 people, maybe more. They're on the roads, they're trying to get out. It is a great exodus underway and it's totally chaotic.
The whole place is under threat. It seems they're going to strike. We've got to pick up our family and flee.
With all these threats and strikes, it's so dangerous. It is not safe at all.
The words of a far-right Israeli cabinet minister have amplified the anxiety here. Parts of Beirut, predicted Bezalel Smotrich, would resemble decimated districts in Gaza. The Israelis have also ordered people in southern Lebanon to evacuate their homes, and we discovered their air campaign was well underway in the battered-looking city of Tyre.
That is the aftermath of an airstrike, a couple of 100 meters from where we are. We'd just arrived in Tyre. We'd gone into a restaurant. The restaurant shook from the blast.
The following day, we were taken to the bomb site and told we were looking at the city power station, the tank holding diesel, a tower supporting solar panels. The site turned into a smoking wreck. And we saw the remains of another 2 strikes, both belonging to Hezbollah's quasi-bank. We wondered why some residents had decided to stay.
But the Israelis, they've told you to leave. They've told you to get
no
out.
money. From where? We have kids, we have, you need petrol, you need houses, the renting, everything. We have pressure. We have pressure here in the south. There's nowhere to go. Our problem, there's nowhere to go at all.
Regardless, the Israelis are taking new positions in the south, as the country's chief of staff says he won't stop until Hezbollah's disarmed. But the resident of a hilltop village who filmed these images told us he won't leave his home.
You're very close to the Israelis themselves. You can see them.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yesterday I saw them
there in this area, in my, without using camera, without using zoom, I saw them there. There was more than 12 vehicles.
Okay, 12 vehicles. What does it feel like when the Israelis, their vehicles, their tanks are so close?
So you don't have any idea what they can do. If I am taking a photo to the Merkava, how I know that they will not attack me?
Members of Hezbollah are trying to attack in the name of the Iranian supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. This picture here propped up on a rocket launcher. But their firepower is limited, and there are many in Lebanon who just want them to stop. It seems this military conflict could morph into all-out war, a contest, a catastrophe that sweeps up all in its path. John Sparks, Sky News in southern Lebanon.
Right, time now to see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's papers. The Financial Times reports that the US and at least one Gulf country are looking at Ukrainian-made tech to fight off Iran's drones. State of alert, the Mirror leads on Defense Secretary John Healey refusing to rule out the UK joining attacks on Iran. Meanwhile, the Express has comments from Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch, urging Britain to go on the offensive. The Mail leads with criticism to the UK's response to the conflict, describing the PM's actions so far as desperate and deluded. The Metro's front page focuses on the Prime Minister's promise to protect Brits by sending RAF jets to Qatar and organising repatriation flights to bring stranded citizens home. The Guardian reports on Israel telling 500,000 people to flee Beirut ahead of airstrikes, as well as Starmer's calls for a US-Iran deal. And Sir Keir's calls for the US to negotiate with Iran is on the front of the Daily Telegraph. The Star leads on the special relationship between Britain and the US, saying Donald Trump hasn't spoken to the Prime Minister since the first day of the Iran war. Quite a picture there. And the Sun leads on the condition of serial killer Ian Huntley, claiming he is unlikely to survive after being attacked in prison. Back to Zoe and Francis. Interesting how the Sun, again, has a front page that's not war-related, really, yesterday as well. All the other papers obviously focusing on this. Let's start with the Daily Telegraph. Francis, if I can start with you here. Starmer calling for the US to negotiate with Iran.
Yeah, I mean, which they seem to think is a bad thing. I don't quite know. I don't know quite. But it features heavily the loser comment from Trump and lots of quotes from Conservative Minister Kemi Badenoch twisting the knife, saying he has no backbone, and also a flick of tensions related to the conflicts built onto the streets of Manchester. So they'd looked at, I think, a small demonstration mourning the death of Ayatollah Khamenei.
I mean, sorry, on that kind of last thing, this is a real bugbear for the right-wing press and the right-wing broadcast media, that there are kind of, fifth columnists or enemies within the British public who are mourning the death of Khomeini. It's a completely confected story. It's not a big street movement. It's in my view, an attempt to demonise protest generally. It's an attempt to kind of splash dishonour over, for example, the pro-Palestinian protests. And they can't even find them to take a picture of them. They're absolutely minuscule.
It doesn't look very big.
No, exactly. And the truth of it is, there's always, if anybody anywhere in the world dies of that kind of stature, whatever his politics and his theocratic hinterland, there's going to be five people who are upset about it. So I find the Telegraph making this kind of slightly dog whistle, slightly kind of subsonic attempt to portray society as extremely divided across kind of racial and religious lines, really not like the Telegraph I grew up with.
If we look at some of the other front pages, Daily Star, Daily Mail, they're desperate and deluded. Starmer takes the great out of Britain. I mean, a lot of them really attacking, I guess, the Prime Minister's stance on his relationship with the US and how he wants the UK to relate to this war.
The Mail goes much harder. I mean, and even if you count the Star with this extremely unflattering photoshopped clinch between Starmer and Trump, the Mail, you know, they have no flaw in what they'll say when they're off on one. Where, you know, if like they've got no restraint. So when they say he's desperate and deluded, they don't stop there. They're like, every single thing he does brings shame to the nation. And everything he does goes wrong. Every flight he plans goes wrong. Every aircraft carrier he buys is rubbish. They're like really giving it both barrels.
It's an open goal, though, for the man, you have to say.
I mean, it is.
You know, Starmer's standing there sending what, you know, a warship 2 weeks late and, you know, and 4 jets, was it? I mean, is he staying out of this war or is he going in?
Yeah,
I mean, you know, you know, everybody seems to be confused.
But the thing is, and you know, here I have some sympathy with Starmer. The UK's military capacity is tiny
and irrelevant.
And basically, if we're like shoulder to shoulder with somebody, they will effectively kind of keep us in the slipstream and won't reveal how rubbish we are. But if we're 1 foot in, 1 foot out, if there's scrutiny on how useful we actually are, it does seem an unfortunate truth that we're not that useful.
But I suppose we may not maybe be that useful, but it's the optics of it as well, isn't it? Both domestically and internationally, of just how side by side the UK is going to be with the US. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Starmer's acting this way.
You know, and his language is that the special relationship is in operation and therefore kind of state to state. You know, this always happens when there's tension between prime ministers and presidents. It kind of defaults to the next level down, which is the special relationship. You know, it almost sort of goes into sort of trauma protection mode, and deep state to deep state start talking to one another. And Starmer's sort of leaning into that, saying, big, heavy hint that we're helping with intelligence. I mean, by the way, he doesn't seem to have got any credit at all from Trump for allowing British bases to be used. I mean, zero. So he, you know.
But I think that's just because Trump doesn't read his brief. He's like, well, he said no to me once. I'm not going to keep up with the detail, like anything changing. I just think if you're dealing with President Trump, you have to deal in extremely simple, bold, unchanging movements. And that is not Keir Starmer's forte. But then I would struggle to say what is his forte.
Do you think he's tried to balance this, though? Because, I mean, in a way, maybe he's changed his diplomatic outlook and approach to the way he deals with Trump.
For sure, but, like, it's not working, is it? I mean,
Well, not according to these
like, for a huge amount of time, from, I would argue, the point at which he announced the second state visit until the kind of last couple of weeks, his orientation towards Trump was, you know, suck up to the guy, make believe, fingers crossed, say that the special relationship is still extant, hope for the best, hold your nose. And every time anybody said, come on, are you really going to hold your nose through this latest depredation? He was like, special relationship, doesn't matter how much we're paying on
I can't agree. It's been in the
tariffs.
post since you know, for a long time.
And it's really pathetic. And people who were saying it during the kind of tariff negotiation, this is pathetic, are now joined by a host of people who weren't even concentrating on that, going, this is pathetic.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there because now to the Home Secretary's latest plans to combat illegal immigration. She sat down earlier tonight with Sky's Trevor Phillips, who pressed her on changes which could see children deported.
We're talking about children being put in the back of vans, screaming, frightened, by people who may not want to do it, but have been told by you, they've got to do it. That's what you're saying.
Look, we're currently consulting on the way that we would enforce, and of course we already have arrangements in this country, legal arrangements about how we would handle children, whether that's in a school setting, whether that's with the police, whether that's in, you know, other parts of public service. So there are already well-used rules about the way that we approach the handling of children. And of course we would want to do this as humanely and as effectively as possible.
When the police come knocking on the door, there's no humane.
This is about immigration enforcement,
it's
and it's about being in a process where you are able to enforce your rules. And as I say, if you don't do that, the flip side is you just end up picking up the tab for hundreds of families, hundreds of thousands of pounds per family every single year, and it is the taxpayer in the end that's paying the price of that. So there is no easy solution here. But if you're going to have rules, then you better enforce them. Otherwise, you might as well say to everybody, there's no rules enforced at all. It's an open border situation.
And before we discuss this with Francis and Zoe, let's look at some of the political reaction to the Home Secretary's immigration announcement.
Well, what Shabana Mahmood and this Labour Party have just delivered is another kick in the teeth for hard-working British taxpayers. This country is being invaded. Almost 200,000 people have turned up on our beaches illegally over the last 8 years, mainly because the Tories and now Labour put on a free food bank for the world, endless free accommodation, free meals, free healthcare, etc. And her bright idea announced today is to offer effectively a £40,000 reward, a £40,000 prize to those who come to this country illegally. That's more than the median salary in this country. It's a kick in the teeth for hard-working British people. The way we solve this problem is you do what we would do, which is detain every single illegal migrant in the country and deport them. That is the way you stop the boats from coming.
The idea that this is a deterrent, that it stops the pull factor, that doesn't actually work. When people are desperate and they're fleeing an extreme situation, they're trying to pursue any opportunity they can. They're not even aware of those kind of policy details on the way. So that won't make a difference to the numbers. What it does is just increase the suffering. And so the Green Party is saying, look, we understand that the residents of the UK are angry, they have a rough deal, the bills are too high, the cost of living is extreme. We need to deal with that and stop blaming people who didn't cause it.
Let's discuss this further. And also, I mean, in all the papers, it was on the front page of The Guardian. The headline there, migrant plans mimic Trump. That's according to Labour MPs. There's that story, Zoe. On any other day, of course, this would be even more on the front pages. What have you made of the asylum reforms that have been announced and that interview that Shabana Mahmood gave to Trevor Phillips?
Well, quite aside from the fact that she does sound indistinguishable from reform, when you say if that's the way it has to be, somebody has to put the children in the van, even if they're crying. You could easily be there, Yusuf. But I think, interestingly, because I don't think this is going to go through, which is partly why I'm not getting too aerated about it, but I think, interestingly, what it really illustrates is what this is doing to the Labour Party, because it just cast them into this horrible crisis and internecine fighting that I don't think they're going to recover from. You're going to have people in the middle, you're going to have your kind of Pat McFadden types telling the others to take their medicine, that you have to get to where the country is. You're going to have people on the left saying this is genuinely not what I want to be in politics for, not what I'm in this party for. And you have people on the Labour right, all of whose energy is going to hating on the people on the left. Actually, when you look at Zach Polanski's letter to Shabana Mahmood, which was absolutely hilarious, it quotes her own article from 2015 when she went to Lesbos and talked about the plight of refugees and wrote like an old-school Labour politician. You realise this is doing so much to reshape British politics because it doesn't actually win reform voters back to Labour. But what it does is alienate a huge number of Labour supporters.
Does it do that?
I mean, I agree. It's existential in some ways for the Labour Party. I mean, I think I have some sympathy with the view that unless migration is properly tackled, Labour has absolutely no chance of winning the next election. And it has clearly chosen a political path which seeks to triangulate between, as they would characterise it, the extreme of the Green movement and the extreme of reform, and present these as kind of commonsensical, moderate. But as you know, as we just heard in that interview, what appears in general policy paper terms, kind of straightforward. When you get into the detail of crying children being chucked in the back of vans, it becomes incredibly emotive. Yeah. And as Zoe says, it goes to the heart of Labour values, and they will be the most enormous rebellion. Actually, most of the stuff that she announced today just doesn't need primary legislation and will go through. So But it is certainly a
lot of her plans are based on this Danish model, which actually has been pushed through by the Social Democratic Party there, so a left-wing party. It's proved effective and it's proved popular with the population at large.
The thing is with Denmark, I mean, you can't actually use a Danish model without the rest of Danish society. So the Danish policies around migration are, if you cherry pick them, for example, sorry.
Okay. No, sorry, because we're going to have to leave it there. We'll have more from the Middle East as the bombing continues through the night, and we'll discuss more of the day's news. Stay with us. See you at 11.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what? A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Tonight on The Wrap, hints from the US that the UK and others are getting ready to offer more help in the war. That's as American and Israeli forces continue to hammer Iran and Lebanon, while Iran ramps up retaliatory attacks around the Gulf. Even as Donald Trump took another shot at the Prime Minister over what he sees as a lack of support for the U.S. campaign, are there signs tonight that the U.K. is softening its stance? That's certainly what the U.S. Secretary of War is indicating. Iranian Kurds who fled to Iraq see their chance to return and take on a regime that's, for decades, hunted and killed them. They say they didn't ask for this war, but they are ready to fight in it. Question is, will America back them? And on a day of new small boat arrivals, the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, lays out even tougher asylum rules. It's a case for change she'll need to make with the public and her party, including the forced deportation of children.
There is no easy solution here, but if you're going to have rules, then you better enforce them.
We discuss the day's biggest stories with Zoe Williams and Francis Elliott. Plus, we'll take a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers, including a report in the Financial Times that the U.S. is looking to buy Ukrainian interceptors to fend off Iran's drones. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Could the UK be about to play a bigger part in the war with Iran? That's certainly what the US Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, believes. This as the war rippled ever more violently across the Middle East today, as the US and Israel hammered the country for a sixth day. With me tonight are the Guardian columnist Zoe Williams and the editor of the House magazine, Francis Elliott. Francis, if I can start with you, a quick thought. Could the UK be getting more involved?
Well, I mean, that's the hint. And it was interesting that John Healey in Cyprus today avoided answering a couple of direct questions about whether that would be the case. And the fact that Starmer had his podium moments, sending kind of material and stuff to the region, suggests that perhaps there are discrete tasks that, would still observe his offensive-defensive bifurcation of role.
Yeah. Zoe?
Well, I mean, the problem is the only point of us getting involved is as the trusted ally of the US, because we don't have the firepower to come in as a valuable thing. I don't think we're in that place at the moment. We're not their greybeard. We're not their hand to the king. We're not trusted by them. So, in a sense, we're sort of just kind of scrappy-do, trying to get a piece of the action, which I think is, I think it's humiliating, really.
So, and Francis, we'll get more from you in a moment. First, though, let's hear what Pete Hegseth said earlier tonight.
Well, as the president stated, it was unfortunate that the Brits didn't, from day one, say, hey, go ahead and have access, but we got there. We got there, and that's now part of the way that we're operationalizing bomber runs, and it's part of when we say more to come, it's more fighter squadrons, it's more capabilities, it's more defensive capabilities, and it's more bomber pulses more frequently. The amount of firepower over Iran and over Tehran is about to surge dramatically. And part of it is that we're going to have even more basing. And it's not just the UK. We've had other friends step up, and we're grateful for that.
Well, let's bring in our U.S. correspondent, David Blevins. David, the usual language, or at least the usual tone from Pete Hegseth, things like we are in it to win it. But what did you make of the subtler things he said in his speech?
Well, yes, he was typically bullish, as we know him to be, but I think that was a slightly more conciliatory tone from the man who calls himself the Secretary of War regarding what many people call the special relationship. And when you consider that over the space of the 6 days of this war now, Donald Trump has gone from expressing surprise to disappointment to comparing Keir Starmer to Winston Churchill over his decision not to grant the US permission to use UK bases in the early stages of this campaign, then it is quite remarkable that the tone has shifted to that extent. But Donald Trump himself, I have to say, does now appear to be more focused on what happens next. We had the very unusual spectacle in Washington of him giving us a war update while standing alongside Lionel Messi and the Inter Miami football team celebrating their cup win at the White House. And while he said the enemy had been totally demolished, he again spoke directly, and I think this is telling, to members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. Let's just hear what he had to say.
I'm once again calling on all members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the military and the police to lay down their arms. They're only going to be killed. And now is the time to stand up for the Iranian people and help take back your country. You're going to have a chance after all these years to take back your country. Accept immunity. We'll give you immunity. And we'll be giving you really the right side of history, because that's what it is. So you'll be perfectly safe with total immunity, or you'll face absolutely guaranteed death. And I don't want to see that.
So telling them to be on the right side of history, and he clearly believes he has a part to play in the history making. He told Politico today that he wanted to have a big say in who was the next leader of Iran. Without him, he claimed there would be no solution and that they would find themselves having to go back there in a very short space of time. He then doubled down on that in a conversation with Axios, saying that the Ayatollah Khamenei's son would not be an acceptable successor, that he wanted to have a part to play, just as he did in Venezuela. He talked about choosing Delcy Rodriguez to replace Nicolas Maduro there. But that is quite a remarkable assertion when you consider, or assertion I should say, when you consider that the United States certainly has Venezuela within its sphere of influence. It certainly can't be said of Iran, and yet the President believes he has some right to have a say over what happens there democratically in future.
David Blevins with the latest on that from Washington. David, for the moment, thank you. And with us in the studio now, our political correspondent, Rob Powell. Rob, I mean, a lot to unpick there, but also, what have you made of the suggestions, the possibility that the UK might actually, after all the flip-flopping we've seen over the past few days, might actually end up playing a bigger role?
I think there feels like, if not different substance, then a different tone coming from little bits of government, different bits of government on this. I was quite struck about how the Number 10 side of things were pretty keen to emphasise that, you know, the decision not to go in initially and take part in that was a deliberate decision. And you heard Keir Starmer talking all about principles today. But then those on the sort of, as you might expect, really, the military side seem a little more open, even in just language, to leave open that as a possibility. There was one Western official the other day saying, look, we can't rule anything out. This is a fast-moving situation. Our colleague Ali Bunkle, who's over at Akrotiri in Cyprus, asked John Healey, the Defence Secretary, a couple of times today to rule that out. And he basically said, look, we don't know what's going to happen. And I think, as Francis suggested earlier, if you get a situation where something more direct happens to, you know, a UK service person, or you start to get more attacks coming into Akrotiri, I guess that's why the military side of things aren't ruling anything out. I thought the Pete Hegseth grab just there was interesting. He didn't sound too grumpy, did he? And I mean, I do wonder if the most material impact this could all have in terms of the relationship between UK-US and the kind of policy relationship, I guess, it could be on what happens with the Chagos deal. We know that bill is sort of holed up in the Lords at the moment while discussions take place with Washington over it. I think the reason why, it seems pretty clear now anyway, the reason why Trump suddenly changed his tone on that was because he got wind that Starmer wouldn't allow him to use Diego Garcia to launch these strikes on Iran. The fact that this has escalated now to a point where Starmer did hold out and say no for the first 2 or 3 days at least. I mean, I do wonder, you know, if when this calms down a bit and those talks do begin again over Diego Garcia, after he's gone through all of this, what on earth Trump is going to do in those discussions with the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that conversation that Ali Bunkle had with John Healey. We'll be playing that in just a few minutes. But Francis, over to you. It's such a difficult balance that Keir Starmer has had to strike. He doesn't seem to be pleasing the front pages of the papers. No. Certainly, at least most of them. What have you made of what he could do?
I mean, I think the securocrat operators, the national security advisors, the military people will be saying to him, you've got to have some stake in this if you want to shape any kind of outcome. And the dream scenario for Number 10 would be to align some sort of increase of UK support for an operation that is not offensive but could be deemed as defensive, perhaps guiding kind of tankers through the Straits of Hormuz, something like that. and then they could present that as, and at the same time, some sort of resolution of the conflict such that, you know, the negotiations to end it start in earnest, and then you've got everybody's got an off ramp. But my goodness, it looks it looks a very narrow shot right now, and I mean that's me absolutely being as optimistic as I can.
Did you just use the word securitocrat?
I did. Because that's who they all are.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. No, listen, the problem with this is that thing, you know, success has many fathers, the failure is an orphan. This kind of war that's launched in a rush that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, that nobody really knows what it's for, that the reasons keep changing, I swear it, nobody's going to want to be the father, cousin, second cousin once removed of this war by the end of it. So unless joining it could foster some permanently better relationship with Trump, whose idea of permanence doesn't stretch
but
from
if it
breakfast
presented
to
as a deal
brunch.
that it helps bring the conflict to an end.
Does it though? I mean, I don't.
I'm just wondering whether what the terms would be.
He's not going to get the credit for it if that does happen.
Probably not.
And it's probably not going to happen.
I mean, there's a pretty large mismatch between where Starmer is and where the US was. I was sort of struck listening to Pete Hegseth there talking about, you know, more capabilities, more bomber pulses, more frequency. The amount of firepower over Iran and over Tehran is about to surge dramatically. Yeah. Meanwhile, the front pages of various papers are adorned with Keir Starmer saying, I think we should talk to Iran and negotiate.
We're going to send a Type 45 in a week.
Yeah, Pete Hegseth doesn't sound like he's about to negotiate. Now, we mentioned it earlier. Did the Defence Secretary John Healey hint at a softening of the UK stance earlier? Well, talking to Sky's Alistair Bunkle, he refused to rule out Britain joining strikes on Iran. Let's listen.
Well, we're doing what's necessary alongside the Americans at the moment, and that's having in Cyprus more jets than any other nation. It's having in Cyprus now more than 400 extra air defence teams.
But would you rule out getting involved in an offensive capacity?
And we will, as circumstances in any conflict change, you've got to be willing to adapt the action you take.
You don't rule out British aircraft taking part in offensive operations over Iran at some point?
Everything that we have done is defensive, is legal, and is coordinated with other allies.
John Healey speaking to Alistair Bunkle a little bit earlier. Francis, back to you. What have you made of his comments? And then,
well, it's certainly holding the door open for increased materiel and presence. Whether that's in reaction to unforeseen circumstances or as part of a coordinated effort to mend fences with the US, I think the next 24, 48 hours will show.
I mean, it's interesting, when you look at the Mirror front page about that John Healey visit, they were so bored by the actual lines that they ended up leading on the fact that he had to duck from some drones, which is like sort of, I mean, you could have to duck for some drones going up the North Sea at the moment. There's like, they're everywhere. But it's a kind of index of how little the government knows what to say or how to say it, and anybody in government knows what to say or how to say it. Because if you haven't decided what your policy is going to be, and you're waiting to see which way Trump is going to be feeling about you in the morning, you come off so weak that people end up covering,
Can I just ask, I mean, if we were listening, we were to Pete Hegseth a little bit earlier, quite bombastic language, things like effectively saying that if Iran thinks the US is not going to last the distance, they're wrong. What did he say? We're in it to win it. The timeline is ours. This war will the sixth day? It's been developing very quickly. Don't you think a lot of people in the country, especially with the ghost of the Iraq war hanging over all of us, that a lot of people will be quite happy to see a cautious Keir Starmer?
No, I mean, I think,
Or is it that he's dithered and that's the problem?
Well, look, I mean, I think uncomfortable though, it is for him right now, he will be perfectly happy that in broad terms he is seen as standing against this war. Whether or not the problem for him as we go forward is that he seems to be both against it and to some degree for it. And in classic kind of Keir Starmer way, one might say, he could end up absolutely kind of, getting it from both sides. that said, I mean, he will say, no, I absolutely resisted this, and the front page of the Telegraph is there has to be a negotiated settlement. He won't be unhappy with that front page, weirdly, because that's his view. And let's face it, that's how wars do end. And so Starmer, I think, is trying to insert himself into the endgame of this to some degree.
I just worry. The minute I hear you say that's how wars do end, I start thinking, how do modern wars actually end? I mean, if you think about Russia, Ukraine, we just lumbered past the fourth anniversary of that war.
But if you think of Trump saying that he wants a say effectively on who the next ruler, it will be more ends in defeat rather than any kind of negotiation.
I think Downing Street will be pleased that the more they can get Trump talking about what success looks like, the more they can get him to define his war aims, the happier they will be. Because I think what's absolutely spooking them, and let's face it, spooking everybody, is a commitment to an open end. I mean, why on earth would you go to a show that you don't, you have no idea how it's going to end,
or when,
or what the objections are? And I think, yes, he'll be teased. He's being pulled around. It's strategically horrible. The people who've made a whole career out of negotiating Britain's place in the world are in despair this week at what's happened. I mean, finally, what they really never wanted to happen has happened. We have been severed from our closest ally over a matter of war. That's. I can't tell you how painful that is for the people who've made a career out of this sort of stuff.
Especially with the language.
And they are trying to repair it in the only way they kind of know how, which is sending warships, signalling intelligence sharing, doing what they can, trying to insert themselves, trying to look relevant.
I mean, come on, they should have just woken up when the relationship really was severed, rather than noticing 6 months later. It's ridiculous.
But if the UK does get further involved, what of the thousands of Britons stranded abroad? The government's first rescue flight is in the air, while many other British nationals have been arriving home from the region on commercial flights. Sky's Amelia Harper is at Stansted Airport for us tonight.
Well, good news for passengers on board. This Titan Airways flight has now taken off. It left Egypt. Its refuelling stop in Cairo a couple of hours ago. And we expect it to land here at London Stansted at around 6 minutes past 1, give or take a few minutes. But this was a flight that was meant to take off yesterday from Muscat International Airport in Oman. It was meant to take off at about 11 o'clock local time, or about 7 p.m. Our time. But due to technical difficulties, it never got off the ground. And the Prime Minister yesterday said that 2 more repatriation flights were going to be taking off in the next couple of days. But we know that it's currently over the Adriatic Sea, and it's not going to be long until it lands here in London, much to the relief of the passengers on board. In terms of commercial flights now, 4,000 British nationals have landed back in the UK after the war broke out 6 days ago. As we've been saying for the last nearly a week now, thousands of flights that were meant to leave the Middle East coming back to the UK have had to be cancelled, and much of the airspace above the Middle East has been closed. 8 flights were due to land and did successfully land here in the UK yesterday. And hopefully by the end of today, we should see 10 commercial flights made their way successfully here. In terms of BA, Sir Keir Starmer said that that airline was putting on an extra commercial flight. So they put one on this morning in the very early hours. We're expecting to have one on Friday, one on Saturday and one on Sunday, all taking off from Muscat International Airport in Oman. It should be said that is not the usual flying route for BA, but the airline has said it really can't operate any other routes because of the airspace closures. And as of tonight, 140,000 British nationals have registered with the government saying, I am currently in the Middle East. Not all of them, of course, will want to come home, but it's understood that the majority are interested in coming home at some point. The current Foreign Office travel advice is this. They're warning against all but essential travel to Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar and the UAE, and they're advising against all travel to Israel and Palestine. But with these major international airports having big issues with flights at the moment, including Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Doha, they see, Barbara, 500,000 passengers a day using those airports. And with the backlog that we're seeing at the moment, this is something that could potentially take weeks to clear.
And Zoe and Francis are with me in the studio. Francis, if I can start with you, 140,000 Brits in the region. It's really changed the way we see the Middle East, because the Gulf countries, historically, it's where you go on holidays, you go to Dubai, you know, stag do's, hen nights, whatever. But obviously that's not the case anymore. Many of these 140,000 will want to try and get back home.
Yeah, and, you know, what we know from previous evacuation efforts is they often throw up, you know, well, it was sort of right at the beginning, right? It's really kind of difficult to move even a fraction of that kind of number of people, and you've got to triage them, and you've got to make sure that, you know, the right people are coming home at the right time, and there are always hard luck stories.
There's some commercial flights.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and yeah, that's just a huge headache. And the economic disruption must be absolutely insane, you know.
Did you see the funny story in the Financial Times today about the Dubai tax exiles who were in a rush to get back to Dubai because they have to spend a certain number of days there in order to qualify for the tax exception? And you're like, well, OK, if we're going to talk about evacuations, can we at least put a pin in the ones that are only there to avoid paying for the very public services that would have to go and get them?
OK, but I mean, there's a lot of people as well, especially people with families that are genuinely afraid, especially because if we think it's like day 6 of the war, you know, it could just keep on
I mean, it does draw a contrast as well with the US State Department, which is openly said to its citizens, get out, but you're on your own. So, you know.
Yeah, and presumably they knew in advance what was going to happen. It's forever going to change the way, I think, that a lot of Europeans see these countries.
The long-term reputational damage for these kind of Gulf countries and Dubai as a sort of hub airport and the other kind of big assets that they've got. It must be
a safe place.
You know, and I guess that was Iran's, you know, rather grim logic for the whole war, which was just to make this so painful for their neighbours that they would then put pressure on Trump to turn.
Because otherwise Iran's strategy was really weird. It was like, take all these people who actually were sort of well-disposed, stroke kind of positive neutral.
Well, Oman was trying to negotiate.
Exactly. And then really annoy them. And it's more than annoy them, isn't it? It's going to decimate their tourist industry.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what kind of pressure, and if it does work, that the Gulf states, GCC nations, will put on the US. Now, a new front could also be opening along the rugged mountains of the Iran-Iraq border. For decades, this remote area has been a refuge for Kurdish opposition groups who now want to go back and take revenge on a weakened Iranian regime. Our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, has been speaking to them.
Jets and missiles crisscross the skies over northern Iraq as the war in Iran spreads across the Middle East. Some of the United States' strategically important bases and runways are dotted across this part of the country. These are borderlands between Iraq and Iran, but they're also home to the Kurds, an ethnic minority that straddles the border of the two countries. The small mountain towns are where thousands of Iranian Kurds flee to find safety from the Iranian regime. Amongst them, armed opposition.
Hi, sir. How are you?
Karim Parwazi is a senior political figure in one of the groups preparing to cross the border to join the American-Israeli war against Iran.
Obviously, a lot has happened in the last few days. There is a sense that the Kurds may get involved in Iran. Is that you're planning that now?
For many years, for decades, this regime has attacked us, killed our people, and carried out acts of genocide against us. Now that the regime is becoming weaker and weaker, we see this as an opportunity to finally move towards achieving our freedom.
The wives and children of the Peshmerga, as the fighters are called, have moved out of their military bases as their men prepare for battle. Zanya is one of the fighters who will cross. He's visiting the safe house. Zanya lost his wife and baby in an Iranian missile attack 4 years ago. For him, it is personal, and he thinks now is the time.
Do you think this is one of the most important times now? Is this the last best chance to achieve the falling of the Iranian government.
Much of international community agrees this regime must go. That coordination makes this moment difference, and it gives us hope. This is an opportunity for change.
Many living in these communities have been waiting for decades to return home. They believe, with American support, this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity.
Well, the United States and Israel may have all the sophisticated weaponry and firepower, but it's ironic. But actually, the success or failure of this war could be decided by communities like this one. They're Kurds. They're prepared to cross the border into Iran and join in what they hope will be an uprising against the regime. They didn't ask for this war to happen in the last few weeks or so, but they are prepared to take part.
Would a Kurdish incursion kickstart a nationwide uprising or herald the start of ethnic sectarian chaos in Iran? Like so much in this war, nobody's sure of the endgame. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Northern Iraq.
It's time now to see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's papers. Well, the Financial Times reports the US and at least one Gulf country are looking at Ukrainian-made tech to fight off Iran's drones. On the front page of the Times, US President Donald Trump insists that he must be involved in the choosing of Iran's next leader. State of alert, the Mirror leads on Defense Secretary John Healey refusing to rule out the UK joining attacks on Iran. Meanwhile, the Express has comments from leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, urging Britain to go on the offensive. The Mail leads with criticism to the UK's response to the conflict, describing the PM's actions so far as desperate and deluded. The Metro's front page focuses on the Prime Minister's promise to protect Brits by sending RAF jets to Qatar and organising repatriation flights to bring stranded citizens home. While the Eye leads on panic in Dubai as those stranded there take shelter from the war in basements. The Guardian reports on Israel telling 500,000 people to flee Beirut ahead of strikes, as well as Starmer's calls for a US-Iran deal. And Sakir's calls for the US to negotiate with Iran is on the front of the Daily Telegraph. The Star leads on the special relationship between Britain and the US, with quite a picture there, saying Donald Trump hasn't spoken to the Prime Minister since the first day of the Iran war. And the Sun leads on the condition of Soam killer Ian Huntley, claiming he is unlikely to survive after being attacked in prison. Let's talk about all of them with Zoe and Francis. And again, just to make the point that the Sun, for the second day, is running with a story that's not war-related. So maybe, they're moving on already.
Do you think they've made like a strategic decision that their readers just aren't interested?
Possibly. I guess so, if they're leading with it, if that's their front page. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think they. I think if we're not in it, they're not bothered.
Okay. Well, we'll see if that changes if
exactly.
we have a more relevant role in it. Let's start by looking at the Eye, page 6. So if I can start with you. Reform UK plans new grammar schools if Farage wins elections. So Reform UK have said they are hugely supportive of selective education, so they would create new ones.
This is such a tired, old idea, and it has really nothing to say about education. What it has to say is it's a kind of certain tilting nostalgia at the kind of people for whom life was defined by whether you got into the grammar or whether you got into the secondary modern. Now, just to situate those people in the age that they would be, we're talking about people of at least 65, probably quite a bit older. So it's a kind of nostalgia flag. Everybody get back to the way Britain used to be. And it's like reheated pabulum from Theresa May. Never mind that it doesn't mean anything as a policy. It didn't mean anything as a policy the first time they reheated it, and now it's older, and the people who like it are older, and the whole thing just feels really tired and tragic.
Is it just nostalgia, Francis?
It speaks to me that what's happening in politics at the moment is that there are kind of lots of different games within games, and the game they're playing here is this. I mean, it is a zombie policy, and it is a really deeply unpopular policy. It polls really badly with the general population, but it probably polls quite well with a certain amount of Conservative voter. So it's Reform v... This is just a straight Reform v Tory fight. And, the calculation is that the people that don't like grammar schools, and that's like most of them, won't notice or, wouldn't vote reform anyway.
Let's move on to US news. There never seems to be a shortage of that because, and I think it's Times World, page 30. And Donald Trump has sacked his head of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, very controversial figure, very bombastic language, replaced her with Markwayne Mullin, a Republican senator from Oklahoma, also crucially slightly interestingly, ex-MMA, mixed martial arts. Maybe not that crucial, but quite a thing to Leon Francis.
This is revenge for cricket. If you didn't know, no, cricket was the dog that Kristi Noem shot.
Oh, yes, the 14-month-old
Yes, because you have to do tough things on a farm, apparently. So
and had a goat killed as well.
Yeah, so, I mean,
you guys are going back a bit. She's done so much worse things.
No, but she should understand, I think. She's been taking that...
But all joking aside, I mean, her judgment was called into question precisely.
Well, because she shot the dog. Yeah, no,
well, many other things.
As Homeland Security Chief, she is kind of terrifying. There are huge rumours circulating around the way she and her husband operate within that department. It looked like that the actual effort was being completely capsized by a weird cult of personality, but the personality itself was so horrible. Sorry, no offence. What's the surprising thing is why Trump has sacked her, because he was going to stand by her until literally 5 minutes ago.
And first high-profile sacking as well in this administration. So interesting, because she was obviously sort of the face, obviously, of Homeland Security. If we look at the Yorkshire Post, front page, alarm at water firms' debt actions. Francis, what's this about? There's the Yorkshire.
Gosh. Well, you'll remember that the whole issue of how water firms these utilities go after vulnerable customers who get into debt. There was the terrible stories about the forced installation of meters for electricity, and this seems to be the leading edge of what could be as big a scandal about water firms just taking some pretty grim action against people who are vulnerable. And let's face it, water firms are not anybody's necessarily favourite entities.
The thing is that people hate it when it actually mobilises consumers quite strongly when very large organisations are seen to go after tiny little people. And the BBC has found this with licence fee chasing. You've got there are loads and loads of over 75s who are political refusers of licence fee paying, and the Beeb can't go after them because they know that it would be such a bad look.
Good tease, because we're going to be talking about the BBC licence fee, because that's in the papers as well. After this break, we'll take a first or another look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's papers. Stay with us.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Time now for a closer look at more stories making tomorrow's papers. I'm joined by Francis and Zoe. Francis, let me start with you. Front page of The Telegraph. Yeah. BBC would back tax to replace the licence fee. What's this story?
I see this as the opening salvo in a sort of hoary stalwart that comes around every time there's a charter renewal. And I think they are deliberately raising the idea of a tax just to frighten the government away from it. Is what I think.
Okay. Zoe?
I mean, look, it does come around, this idea that, you know, the flat fee is inherently unprogressive and there should be a tax. And there have been some quite interesting ideas around what kind of tax that could be in order to reflect, you know, some kind of progressive system. But today, the BBC was saying, we'd be fine with the licence fee. We could bring it down so long as more people would pay it. And that is the wrong direction of travel, right? Because their numbers aren't going in that. Their numbers aren't going up. There are more and more people who are relying on streaming services, as you say, or relying on just completely different platforms, who are getting all of their input off YouTube. I haven't seen my kids watch the actual BBC unless The Traitors or The Apprentice is on for ages.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some of their content, obviously, kids will sort of follow on social media.
What,
rather
BBC
than...
Bite Size?
Yeah, no,
only because they have to for school.
Well, we're not, you know, but...
No, I don't know why I'm slating the BBC. I love the BBC, but, you know, you can't have that kind of membership you can't have that kind of model.
Well,
I mean,
certainly that's the debate that we'll see, and it's not just here. A lot of public service broadcasters around the world that have similar models will be having the same debate. If we go to the front page of the Financial Times, use of facial recognition by retailers triggers concerns, understandably. What are these concerns, Francis?
Oh, well, I mean, just straight privacy concerns. I mean, you know, I don't think we're quite ready for the extent to which you can integrate, you know, your face with your shopping habits, how often you go. I mean, you know, and every time, you know, the companies say, oh, no, we won't do that. They don't do it for a bit, and then you find out that they have done it in a slightly sly way. Yeah. So, I mean, shoplifting is clearly a massive issue, and it looks like the police are already kind of rolling out facial recognition, and this is all being done without a proper national debate. And I suspect it'll take some scandal for it to blow up to have the proper debate. It's all done in abstract at the moment.
Yeah, I mean,
because the retailers do say.
When we say, you do what?
Because the retailers are saying it does work when it comes to
it actually doesn't. It picks people up who aren't guilty. You know, I've actually got a young family member who was
gets it wrong sometimes.
Kicked out of Muji. Yeah, it does get it wrong. And quite often it will go. Quite often it will get one person in a group, but then the whole group will be kicked out or humiliated or bullied by the members of staff. You know, it's not cool. When I was it wasn't when I was a baby journalist. It was only about 10 years ago. The facial recognition software was so much less developed that the way to fox it was to draw a third eye on your face, because actually the triangulation of eyes and nose was how it recognised you. And if you had like a random eye, it couldn't recognise you at all. Now, it's much more sophisticated than that now, and you can't evade it. Yeah. But it should terrify us a lot more than it is.
But, you know, Francis, you were mentioning, like, debates that we're not quite having because the technology is changing so quickly. There's another story here, which is in the Times page too, about AI. AI could get copyright law exemptions. So ministers apparently are considering a plan to give AI companies an exception from copyright law, which of course has worried the creative industries.
I mean, this is a bleeding sore, and I don't know how they get. I mean, it seems close to insoluble, because the AI firms are saying, we can't seek and get individual permission from every publisher or, content producer, it'll completely kind of hobble and hamper what we can do. The government were going to do it. They stepped away from it. Looks like they're kind of stepping back to it. But at some point, this is one of those things they're going to have to make their minds up about.
Francis, if I can stop you there, let me bring you some breaking news now, coming into us from Bahrain, which says an Iranian attack has tonight targeted 2 hotels and a residential building in the capital, Manama. They say no injuries have been reported and no major damage caused. So this breaking news coming into us from Bahrain, where they mention an Iranian attack has targeted 2 hotels and a residential building. We'll bring you more developments, of course, on that and other attacks that we are seeing in the Gulf and across the Middle East. Now, for the best part of an hour tonight, Sky's Trevor Phillips sat down with the Home Secretary over her new plans to combat illegal migration. Asylum seekers who break the law, work illegally, or can support themselves financially will now have their accommodation and financial support removed under new laws. Shabana Mahmood told us the rules have to be followed, even potentially in the instance of deporting children. Let's take a listen to what she said.
We're talking about children being put in the back of vans, screaming, frightened by people who may not want to do it, but have been told by you, they've got to do it. That's what you're saying.
Look, we're currently consulting on the way that we would enforce, and of course we already have arrangements in this country, legal arrangements about how we would handle children, whether that's in a school setting, whether that's with the police, whether that's in other parts of public service. So there are already well-used rules about the way that we approach the handling of children, and of course we would want to do this as humanely and as effectively as possible.
But when the police come knocking on the door, there's no humane
This is about immigration enforcement,
it's
and
terrifying.
it's about being in a process where you are able to enforce your rules. And as I say, if you don't do that, the flip side is you just end up picking up the tab for hundreds of families, hundreds of thousands of pounds per family every single year, and it is the taxpayer in the end that's paying the price of that. So there is no easy solution here. But if you're going to have rules, then you better enforce them. Otherwise, you might as well say to everybody, there's no rules enforced at all. It's an open border situation.
Let's get the thoughts of Zoe and Francis on this. Now, on any other day when there wasn't a war that we are sort of but not really involved in, this obviously would have been lead on most of the papers, if not all of them, and a key story.
And I don't think it would be a key story because of the measures themselves, because I don't think that, I mean, very like Rwanda, actually, a lot of it was posturing. As you watched it unfold, you thought this, however it fails, this isn't going to happen. I look at the 40 grand maximum boost to kind of per family to leave the country. I think, however this fails, it's not going to happen. But what is going to happen is there's going to be a massive crisis within the Labour Party. The Labour left is going to wonder what it's even doing in the party. The Labour right is going to lose a huge amount of headroom fighting with the left. The Labour centre is going to completely lose bearings. It's going to give a massive boost to the Greens, who've already, as you saw earlier, Rachel Millard made a pretty solid statement about it, but actually Zach Polansky's letter to Shabana Mahmood, in which he quotes her writing about refugees in Lesbos in 2015 in very humane terms, nothing like the terms she's using now, makes her look ridiculous, makes her look like she'll say anything, like she'll sing for any kind of supper. So that it is going to change. It's going to refashion British politics without actually doing anything about small boats, which is the definition of completely incompetent political posturing.
I suppose, she said, I think, what was her quote, firm but fair, that's what these policies are.
I mean, Zoe won't like this, but I don't think they'll mind at all that Polansky and the Greens have come out so strongly already, because they can, and I think they will, the Starmer and Shabana Mahmood and others who of that kind of persuasion in the Labour Party believe this is an existential issue for this government, that unless they can be seen to be, quote unquote, tough on migration, unless the numbers of small boat companies do materially fall, over period. By the way, they are starting to trend down.
Listen, I don't like that.
No.
That's what you think I don't like is not what I don't like.
OK.
It's not the fact that I'm not waiting for Starmer and Mahmood to say, oh no, the left is upset. What should we do? I know that they're effectively giving the left of their own party a punishment beating to look tough for reform voters. That's not what's upsetting me. What's upsetting me is why they can't figure out that that's not working, however much it does.
Can I just say that a lot of these policies are based on the Danish model, and it has proved to work there, and it was a left-wing government that pushed them through.
The Danish model is within the context of Danish society, right? So you might well have that policy, but you also have an amazing network of housing for asylum seekers, genuine, once you're there, here, learn the language, here, have some help getting a job, here, have some help to integrate. It's like a completely different system.
10 seconds.
One of the little oddities is that the Conservatives will be silently cheering Labour on in its efforts to curb migration because it benefits as much if the salience of the issue declines.
We're going to have to leave it there. Obviously, an issue we'll be discussing again. But for the moment, Zoe Williams, Francis Elliott, thank you both so much. It's been a pleasure to end the day with you.
You too.
Coming up next, it's the sport, how a fifth straight Premier League defeat had some Tottenham fans heading for the exit before half-time.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. We've just entered Gaza. The vista out there is complete destruction. I'll always remember going into Gaza City during the war. All around us was destruction and the sounds of battle. What you see a lot of here are military machines, soldiers, devastation and destruction. What you see very little of are the locals, the Gazans, the people who used to live here, the ghosts of this town. I witnessed the scars of the October the 7th attacks, burnt out homes, bullet holes in walls and bloodstains on the floor.
People were murdered. You have the black flag, you have the yellow flag, people were kidnapped.
Inside this convoy, prisoners released by Israel in exchange for their hostages.
The Israelis insist that many of these prisoners are terrorists. But here, the Palestinians consider them a blend of freedom fighters and political prisoners.
There were tears and there was defiance. This land has been farmed for hundreds of years, but now it's a scene of conflict. Israeli settlers have come to this area to seize land.
They've taken the land that I inherited from my father, and my father inherited from his father.
What would happen if you went over?
Oh, we'll be shot.
This is a place where the past is cherished, but the future is feared. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Well, hello and thank you for watching tonight on The Wrap. We will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why.
He did know what he was doing.
Both agree on that, can we?
No.
No. Can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable?
What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree. And laughs along the way.
Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Let's get the latest now from Sky Sports News. Here's Mike.
clap your hands.
Good afternoon.
I'm sure all the Arsenal fans would want to know how much ammunition are you going to give Arsene Wenger to fire?
It'll be enough.
Arsene wanted certain players to come in, and meanwhile he wasn't really the manager yet.
I went a few times to watch Can play, and I asked after the game, who is this guy?
Patrick was top of his list.
He was telling me that he was on his way to Arsenal, and I said, listen, you're going anywhere, I'll follow you.
He was going to join Ajax, and in fact I think Bayern Munich were also in for him at the time.
I spent 3 days in Amsterdam.
So we had hijack it.
His agents called me, tell him to take the plane to fly to London.
We were breaking the mould. We had to rely on Arsene's judgment.
Adding a continental touch to Arsenal's never say die style is what Wenger is promising.
Quand je suis venu, je veux dire, il y a tout ce qu'il faut pour être un grand club. Je veux dire, ils ont un public qui est fabuleux.
I believe he has a great future. At the time, English players were dominant. It was a risk, yes, when we bought foreign players.
He knew what I was missing to go to the top.
We weren't used to this at Arsenal. We were very British. I was like, who are all these French guys?
Steve Bold turned around with his tray full of beers. I just remember Patrick Facegood square.
He was special. How they see Milan got rid of him.
Quite literally unbeatable.
Captain of the Invincibles.
You don't get a better legacy than that.
It was one of the greatest bargains in the history of Premier League transfers. Patrick Vieira, £3.5 million.
He should have a statue, in my opinion.
Everybody realised that guy could change the destiny of Arsenal Football Club.
The rest is history.
Cannes at the time had one of the best academies in the country. I mean, Zidane is obviously the other outstanding one to come out of there. And for him to start at 17, for a team like Cannes, who at that time was playing top 7, top 8 in France, and yeah, he was the best player on that team, pretty much. For us, in France, he was very, very highly rated.
I was coaching Monaco, and it was an end-of-season game. We played a kind of League Cup at the end of the season. He played with Cannes, and I asked after the game, who is this guy? He won the challenges, he dominated the midfield. After the game, I said to my assistant, I've seen a great player today.
He was tall, he was strong, he was so determined, he was hard on people, but he could move the ball so well. He had everything. There was no doubt he was destined for great things.
I went a few times to watch Can play. He had that presence, that he was quite complete player defensively and offensively. It was always difficult to buy the players from one.
Now let's take a look at the weather.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, after the recent early spring warmth, temperatures will return to near average to end the week. Much of Scotland, Ireland and Northern Ireland will have a fine start, if frosty with icy stretches. Elsewhere, there will be some rain with snow on northern hills, but the mild southeast looks dry. England and Wales will stay rather cloudy through the morning, with rain and hill snow slowly fading, but the dry southeast looks bright. Elsewhere, expect almost unbroken sunshine, but the south and east of Scotland will be quite cloudy. It will be colder than recently, but still mild in the far southeast. The afternoon looks sunny for Scotland, Ireland and Northern Ireland, while cloud will linger elsewhere. Central and eastern England will see patchy rain moving in. Saturday will bring sunny spells to the north and west, but the far northwest of Scotland will be dull, wet and blustery.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, that was the wrap. Thank you for watching. All the top stories coming up right here on Sky News. Thanks for watching. Good night.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra al-Baghir has this report, and this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.